But yeah, so I don't know how much you know about the podcast, but just about mental health and entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah,
Oftentimes, any sort of mental health can be translated to entrepreneurship in a lot of ways. So,
absolutely.
first, would love for you to just share your story as far back as you want to go, um, and yeah, I'm sure the audience would love to hear that.
Sure. So I have been a paraplegic for almost 18 years. January 20th, 2020 will be my 18-year life day because and I call it a life day because to me, it was kind of a rebirth. It was a
Hmm.
second chance at life that most people that go through something traumatic like I did don't get that opportunity. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I was injured because of domestic violence in a car accident. So sorry.
You're fine.
No, no, no. Okay, I'm going to have to put on Do Not Disturb, Joey. I am so sorry.
No, you're totally fine. What's great about podcasts is that they can be edited.
Edited,
So,
yes. Yeah, that totally uh, wasn't expected. Normally, I always automatically put it on Do Not Disturb and forgot this time.
you're totally fine.
Okay, so I was injured because of domestic violence in a car accident. It was more so I hate using the domestic violence term because it was more out of anger. My ex was we had gotten into an argument about something stupid, which is pretty typical when you're emotionally immature, and we both were very much so. I was 21, he was 20, and we got into an argument over something stupid and we're in the car and he was driving out of anger. He was doing 75 in a 35, lost control, flipped the car 6 times. I went out the passenger side window. My body hit a tree and broke my vertebrae in my back, causing me to be a paraplegic. I was in a coma for 2.5 months. And when I came out of a coma, I had a lot to deal with and a lot to accept, and I didn't do that right away.
Hmm.
Um, it definitely took many years, and now fast forward, almost 18 years later, I am in therapy. I actually just this year finally was diagnosed. I have complex PTSD, which is something that I kind of figured that I had, but again, never really sought any kind of outside help, wasn't really offered any kind of counseling. And so, one thing that you don't know, because we haven't spoken a while, was in January of this year, I actually had almost a total nervous breakdown
Hmm.
and everything really really hit me mental health wise, and it was as if my life was just spiraling out of control. I had let my career kind of fall to the ground. I didn't realize it, but I was slowly kind of giving up on everything, and
Hmm.
now I can look back and I know what it was. I was just overwhelmed and had never really dealt with the accident. I had never dealt with um, the negative emotions that comes with being a paraplegic, because life isn't always peaches and cream.
Hmm.
um, and I really did that to myself. I felt as if I had to, as a public figure and as a motivator, I felt like people had to look at me for help and to for empowerment, and that was my job, that was my purpose, was to empower other people. And in doing that, I really, really lost touch with myself and remembering that I also need self care. And a lot of that was because I didn't know how to care for myself. I didn't know
Hmm.
how to deal with trauma responses and triggers and depression and anxiety. I didn't know how to deal with that on my own. And when I hit that place in earlier this year, I finally started reaching out and found an amazing therapist and started working through stuff and started learning about me and focusing on me rather than what I do with my entrepreneur brain, which is focused on
Hmm.
everybody else.
Yep.
And also realize that even in my personal relationships, none of them were going to be healthy ever if I didn't work on myself first. And one of the biggest things that I had to work on was loving myself and nurturing the inner
Mhm.
child. Um, I I didn't even know that there was an inner child that needed to be nurtured. Um, so yeah, this year has been a year of self healing
Mhm.
and exponential growth, and it's also helped me empower other people. And I've also learned that the more that I'm transparent and the more that I speak about all of the dark things that people don't want to talk about, all of my personal issues, the more
Mhm.
that I am able to reach my audience and I am able to live my purpose and fulfill my purpose in helping other people.
Yeah, I think, I've heard this a lot from different people recently of like, people talk about destigmatizing mental health. um, or even, I had a conversation with someone the other day about, if you have employees or a team, how can you be aware of their mental health as well? And it's all about, you hear this a lot of creating conversations, but for the people like that are the entrepreneurs, that are the public figures that have a reach and a following, when you actually discuss those things and you share those things, people resonate with that. Someone might have the exact same, as you called, I think you said a nervous breakdown, or people, they probably might have had the same thing. And if they hear you openly talk about that, then they feel less like they're some crazy person, or that they're the only one experiencing that thing. So I think, if you wouldn't mind, I think it might be powerful for people to hear more about what that looked like for you earlier this year. As you were going through it, what were you experiencing?
Yeah. So I mean, that's yeah. I think that you're absolutely right. You know, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in life, through my experiences, is that everything that happens to us in life, if we look at it as a lesson, why not share that? Because
Hmm.
other people also need to learn that lesson. We're not alone. And so in January of this year, when I had my breakdown, um, I can remember vividly still. I was driving, I was going through so many different things. I had another failed relationship. I was losing my home to foreclosure, which I have to say I'm still in my home. I didn't lose it. Um, there was all of these things. It was as if my life was falling apart around me. And there was nothing I could do. I had no control whatsoever of anything that was happening. And I can remember driving down the road in my car, and I have all these things going through my head, right? And I'm in the middle of this depression and this basically basically a panic attack in my own mind of what was happening, and not being able to control all the different factors that were spinning in my life. And I was driving down the road, and my brain was actually telling me to drive in front of a tractor trailer, to drive off a bridge. And um, I just immediately, was just bawling, and I pulled over the car
Hmm.
and I called one of my safe people, because I have about four safe people in my life who are people that have either known me my whole entire life or people that I have kind of picked up along the way. Brian Scrone actually is one of them.
Hmm.
And I picked up the phone, and the first person that I thought to call was my mom. And I was bawling, and I'm like, Mom, I just want to drive in front of a tractor trailer. And she's going, Are you suicidal? And I was like, Yes, but no, I don't want to die.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
this is what my brain is telling me, and I know that this isn't okay. But then there's another part of me that's telling me if I do this, then everything's going to be gone, and I'm not going to have to feel this pain that I'm feeling internally, because that's really what it was, right? It was pain. I was
Hmm.
in excruciating pain internally. And at that point, my mom, she met me where I was, and she came and got me and brought me home, and she stayed by my side the entire time. And she started making phone calls. She started calling my doctors, my primary care doctors. And we did end up finding out that I had been, and this is part of, this is I think a really important piece to my story, is I had, for all these years, I had been on antidepressants.
Hmm.
and anti-anxiety medications,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had never sought like actual psychiatrist, somebody that could manage those meds and that really, really knew those medicines, my primary care doctor had actually overdosed me on serotonin. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had something that was called serotonin syndrome, which was what was causing the suicidal thoughts and the feeling as if everything was spiraling out of control and I couldn't do anything to stop it. And once we identified that, and I started going to a psychiatrist, and then a couple days later, I had my first appointment with my therapist. I remember sitting in that room, Joey, and just bawling my eyes out and apologizing over and over, like I know I sound crazy, and I'm not crazy, and I just kept saying all these things. And
Yeah.
my therapist grabbed my hand and she said, "Honey, you're not crazy." And all of this is okay. You have been through a lot. Your brain has experienced more trauma at your age than some people who are 80 years old have ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all hitting you at one time, and it's okay. The reason that I was apologizing was because I think that society has placed a negative stigma on mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on any kind of medications, or you're in therapy, or you have a diagnosis such as PTSD or anxiety disorder or whatever it may be, bipolar disorder, there is that word crazy that's attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially social media and regular mainstream media, and it's all around us. There's always these things that are placed into our heads that are false beliefs, that it's not okay to be this way.
Yeah.
And rather than concentrating on what has happened to that individual and recognizing that it is okay, it just needs to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where I started. I started therapy and started learning. I got an actual diagnosis, and as much as I hate labels,
Mm-hmm.
that diagnosis was very important to me because it validated that I wasn't crazy, and that it was okay to feel what I was feeling. But what was not okay was to continuing to live that way. Um, so I also started that same week that I started doing therapy. I reached out to one of my now very, very close and most cherished people in my life, who I met through American Dream U when I spoke on your dad's stage
Mm-hmm.
in Oklahoma at Fort Sill. And it's Steve Sisler.
Oh yeah, Steve. Yeah.
I reached out to Steve one night, and I'll never forget. It was in the evening. It was kind of late evening, and I was on Facebook, and he had commented on something of mine, which he does frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve and I had really formed just this really special bond and understanding when I met him. He's one of the most beautiful humans that I know. And I just was like, you know what? The worst that anybody can say to me is no. So I'm going to reach out to Steve and I'm going to tell him what's going on and see if just maybe he could offer some insight to my behaviors and help me even further than what my therapist is helping me. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I knew that I needed all the help I could get because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be this way. And I knew also at that moment that this, everything I was going through, was really going to be the catalyst that was going to push me forward in my career and in my purpose in helping others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to Steve and I gave him like this long message about what was happening. I mean, I just kind of like um yeah, just kind of threw everything at him, and he said, "You know what, Erica, I want to work with you." And I remember coming back to him and I'm like, "Steve, my career has fallen to the ground and there's no way on earth I can afford to work with you."
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and he said, "No, I want to work with you pro bono." And I just cried like a baby. Very next day, I had an appointment with Steve, and I had did a behavioral assessment with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he went through that assessment with me. And everything that he said was right.
He's really talented. Yeah.
He is. He is a master in what he does. And he started sharing with me things about myself that I already knew, but didn't realize they were actually affecting me in a negative way rather than empowering me. And one of the biggest things was I was a people pleaser. And he said, Erica, I have never read somebody's profile and found anybody's profile that is this much of a people pleaser. He's like, you are, yeah, my first, which is crazy because he's been
Yeah.
doing this for like years and years and years.
Mhm.
He said, and I told him, I shared with him that my therapist had told me that I was like a Care Bear, and a Care Bear stare all the time. Do you know what a Care Bear stare is?
No.
So, in the movie Care Bears, back in the I think early '90s,
Uh-huh.
a Care Bear stare is when all the Care Bears come together and they put all of their super positive powers and they allow people to come in and help them and they heal and they find all the positive things. Well, that was me.
Hmm.
I had no personal boundaries, and I was constantly in a Care Bear stare where I was literally attracting people that were just as broken as me, but I was taking on their brokenness. I was taking on all of their negative stuff. um, Being an empath is a
Hmm.
really good way of explaining it.
Hmm.
I was an open book, like, come to me and I will heal you, come to me and I will help you. But what I was doing was I was borrowing all of their negative energies and I was holding it in. And so I already had my own, and everything was just manifesting until my brain couldn't handle it anymore.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for sharing all of that because it's something, there were bits and pieces of that that I've experienced in my own life. And I'm sure people listening as well. And you hit on so many things there that I want to try to get to.
sure.
Um, the first thing is asking for help. I think it's something that especially entrepreneurs struggle with, and it's something that I struggled with. So with my depression and um, you know, suicidal thoughts, I didn't ask for help. Nobody knew that
Mm,
I was experiencing those things. I didn't tell anyone, my best friends, no one. And so it was not until, 2.5 years ago or so, as that was happening, that I told my now fiance, and just really shared it with her.
mm,
And in a way, I didn't directly ask for help, but it was kind of what I was trying to do.
right.
And from that, that's, I think, when the real healing started, is because I was willing to share that I was going through something like that, which I didn't want to do. And then I was willing to accept help. And I'm still not good at it all the time.
Me
There
neither.
are times when things, start to spiral a bit, and I don't want to ask for help because I'm stronger than that and I can do it on my own.
Right.
So how was that? How did it feel, you know, when I feel like you have these safe people too. I'm trying to tie these all in, but
Absolutely.
asking for help, how powerful do you think that is, and how has it impacted your own mental health?
So, in the beginning, asking for help was one of the scariest things. And for me, the reason why it was scary was, again, I had built this social media presence of being this strong survivor, and people looked to me for that strength and that
Hmm.
courage. And here I was totally lacking it myself. So, it was very, very scary. But once I did it, and like I said, the first person that I reached out to was my mom.
Hmm.
And um, I can just remember the relief that I felt when I was finally with her and in her arms. And I can remember she slept next to me in my bed for like a week straight because she was afraid to leave me. And I just remember the sense of calm and peace that I had been lacking for so long because I had finally let all of that out and said, okay, there's a problem and it's not okay. Because again, although my brain was in a suicidal state, my healthy brain, my healthy part of me,
Hmm.
didn't want to die. I didn't want to commit suicide. Are you
Hmm.
kidding me? I have so many things to be thankful for. I have three beautiful, beautiful children that I could never imagine leaving. I could never imagine leaving them. Um, so I felt a sense of relief and I felt a sense of calm and also a sense of validation that it was okay. And I had other people in my life, including my mom was one of them, that was explaining to me, like, Erika, it's okay. Like, I've felt this way before. And the more that people told me, I've been there, I felt this, I've wanted to commit suicide, but this is what stopped me from doing it. And the more people that told me that, the more it validated me and my feelings and that it was okay. And I think that that was the most important, and I think turning point for me was being validated and being told it's okay to feel this way.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel the same way with as I've continued to share my experiences, especially through this podcast. Before this, I would share it with very close people. But besides that, I didn't want to broadcast this to the world. But in doing that, I was able, a lot of people that I used to know, they reached out, and I had no clue they were experiencing similar things.
You probably didn't know
And
that about me, did you?
I did not. No, because I see you as this very strong person, and I met you at that event, and we experienced a couple of days together,
Yeah.
and you don't know what people are experiencing. That person that you work with or whoever, they might be going through a really challenging time, and people are really good at putting on their acting faces around other people, but you don't know when they go home what they're experiencing. So um, I wrote down some other things. So as you started to share your mental health struggles, how has that impacted you personally and professionally, in your business and with your personal relationships? Have those deepened? Have you felt judged, or has it all been positive?
Yeah, for the most part, it's all been positive. I mean, there's always going to be those people here and there that make you feel judged.
Hmm.
Um, but I've also learned to dismiss those people very quickly because I know that they've never walked a day in my shoes. They have not experienced my life experiences. And I think that that's one of the healthiest things that I've learned through therapy is to not allow other people's judgments or other people's conceptions of what my life is like, not to allow that to affect me anymore. Me being a people pleaser and always being in that Care Bear stare, I always needed validation from other people, whether it was, knowing that my dad was proud of me or that my kids were proud of me
Hmm.
or that I made a difference in somebody's life. All of those things, I needed those validations constantly. And I think that what that boiled down to was I was lacking self-love. I was lacking um, the knowledge of how to nurture that inner child that was crying and hiding in a little dark space in my brain. And in sharing my story publicly, I have had 98% of a positive experience. The little 2%, like I said, I've learned to kind of dismiss that because we're always going to have that. That's the duality of life, right?
Hmm.
Wherever there's positive, there's always going to be a negative. That's just the way, it's the universal law. It's the way the world works. Um, but the overwhelming response of the 98% has helped me so much personally. It's empowered me to be even more transparent.
Hmm.
It's empowered me to learn even more about the different things that I live with. It's empowered me to continue to improve myself. And it's also helped me in my career in, again, going back to that transparency, being more transparent and reaching out and reaching so many more thousands of people. When I first started sharing this openly and publicly on social media, I can't even tell you the responses I got, not only in comments, but mostly in private messages of people that I looked up to as role models reaching out to me and saying, Erika, I am so proud of you. And you just motivated me to talk about my struggles.
Hmm.
People that I looked up to,
Yeah.
that I never in a million years thought ever struggled in these ways, came out of the woodwork. And some of them have even actually came to me for help,
Hmm.
which blew my mind. Like, these are
Hmm.
people that I look to for knowledge and mentorship, and people that I wanted to be like.
Yeah.
and they're reaching out to me for advice. And yeah, it's been very powerful and very positive for the most part.
Yeah.
Um,
S- in another part of your healing, you said was a lot of that self-care, and you've talked about that multiple times throughout this. And that's something that all of the other guests that I've brought on so far have mentioned in some form or another self-care.
yeah.
And so what does that look like for you?
Self care for me. So I've learned, again, going back to the Care Bear stare, that I am an empath, I'm a healer. And so I feel everything, I feel
Hmm.
everybody's energies. But I'm also a projector. I want to cure everybody and
Hmm.
help everybody. It's just in my nature to want to help.
Hmm.
And I would say that for me, self care a lot of times is something as simple as just having time and space alone and decompressing and kind of sorting everything out in my brain. Now, what does that look like? Sometimes it just looks like me laying in my bed with my favorite blanket. Sometimes it's reading and learning. I read a lot of personal development and growth books and a lot of now psychology books and just educating myself. And for me, that's super therapeutic.
Hmm.
Another huge, huge, huge part of my mental health wellness is working out. So I am a CrossFit athlete. I've been doing CrossFit for about 3 years. I compete in CrossFit, and I also this year started doing Spartan races.
Yeah, I saw that.
And as brutal as they look and as they are, because it's not just an appearance, they're brutal. It takes a lot of grit and it's a lot of physical abuse to your body. But there's something in that and pushing myself to my physical limits and even to my mental limits and what I think I'm capable of has
Hmm.
helped me tremendously and is a huge, huge part of my self care.
Hmm.
Um, one of the best antidepressants in the world for me is going to the gym. To the point that I've even also, thought of possibly, and I have gone down in how much antidepressants that I take. I'm actually only on one antidepressant now, which
Hmm.
is that's the first time that's ever happened in the last almost 18 years that I've been
Wow.
paralyzed. I was always on multiple different medications, and now just on one.
Wow.
And I contribute a lot of that to you know physically exerting my body and working out and getting that natural dopamine that happens
Hmm.
when your adrenaline gets up and when you're really
Hmm.
pushing yourself and exerting yourself physically.
Yeah, I have to go to the gym. Like it's not something that I like to do or want to
Me
do. It's
neither.
something that I need to do.
Yes.
Like it's funny this morning I slept in a little bit and I did not go to the gym this morning. And so I decided this morning, I was like, okay, normally I go first thing in the morning, but I will go at some point today. Like I made that commitment to myself and it's something that really helps my mental health. If I don't go to the gym 2 or 3 days in a row, I can tell.
Yeah.
It's like a noticeable difference. And so I think a lot of other people experience that as well. I know some people are nervous and afraid to get in the gym and work out, and it's a challenge.
Yeah.
But there really is something to that natural high that you get from exerting yourself.
It's amazing. It's the best
Yeah,
feeling in the world.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know for me, when I'm having bad days or I'm in a dark space for whatever reason, I mean, it might be something small. That's the first thing I go to is the
Hmm.
gym.
Yep.
And even if it's for 30 minutes,
Hmm.
it makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
And it changed my eating habits, which I have really, really learned is a big part of mental health and wellness. You have to have a whole wellness for your whole body, right? It's
Hmm.
physical, emotional, spiritual,
Hmm.
all of them. And so in training, I've also had to, if I want to get those muscle gains, I've got to be eating right.
Yep.
And I never realized how horrible my diet was. And I mean, sometimes because of my anxiety, I would skip a lot of meals. I wouldn't eat. And now I notice if so I know you've heard the term hangry.
Yep.
I get hangry. I never noticed that before until I started making it a priority.
Yeah.
that when I start feeling irritable or start feeling as if I can't deal with whatever's happening at the moment, I just might be hungry. You just need some fuel
Yeah.
and some healthy fuel. I used to be, because I was always in a hurry. Entrepreneurs stay busy, right?
Hmm.
We're running 10,000 miles an hour in 10 different directions at all times,
Hmm.
sometimes in our brains. And so I was very, very guilty of just pulling up to Taco Bell and going through the
Hmm.
drive through. Like that was
Hmm.
my guilty pleasure. And now I don't do that. I come home and I eat something healthy that I already have prepared
Hmm.
here. And
Yeah.
it's really made a world of difference in my mental health.
Yeah. It's so one of the previous guests, she talked a lot about trauma and about how trauma is physiological and it sits in your body, and stress and anxiety and all that. It's alive in your body, and so by getting in the gym or changing your physiology, whether that's, and she was really into cold exposure, which I'm really into right now as well, like
I just
uh,
heard of that.
ice baths.
Yes.
And I'm actually doing a part of Mount Hood here in Portland, the volcano, and we're doing it in shorts and no shirt this Saturday. It's supposed to be like a high of 30 degrees and snowing.
So while
But
you're doing that, I'm going to be in Florida running a 14-mile Spartan Beast race.
oh, beast.
Weather, a beast. Yeah.
Oh no, we're both going to be pushing our bodies this weekend.
We are, but you're going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'd rather be in 80 degrees and
I
snowing.
I would too. I really would too. But I've already committed, so I have to do it.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's very true. Eating and eating well and treating your body right can impact your mental health more than people think.
Absolutely.
It is really, really powerful. Trying to think of what
So
else.
you just talked about climbing Fort Hood.
Yeah, Mount Hood. Yep.
So in September of 2020, September 13th through the 23rd,
Okay.
I will be in Tanzania climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
I will be the second paraplegic female to ever make the summit.
Wow.
But I'm not doing it because of my paralysis. I'm doing it to bring attention to suicide prevention and mental health awareness.
Hmm.
And I'll actually have a videographer documenting the
Hmm.
entire thing. And we're going to talk the whole entire climb about why I'm doing this.
Huh.
And
That'll be epic.
yes, yes, I'm so, so excited for that. So excited.
September, you said next September?
Yeah, September 20th.
Okay. You probably got some training to do because that's a big mountain.
Altitude training has been the biggest thing. I
Hmm.
have an altitude training mask
Yep.
that, I wear during training and CrossFit, and I'll be
Because
wearing during my beast.
how high is that? How high is the mountain? 19,000.
19,500 something feet. Yes,
Yeah,
we'll
that's
go
pretty
through
high.
5 different climate systems on the way to the top.
That's wild.
It's going to
Wow.
be an epic, epic climb, but
Yep.
I'm nervous, but I'm also so super excited
Hmm.
to make that journey and to document it and to
Yeah.
really, really, really talk about my climb in life,
Hmm.
because life is
Yeah.
a journey. It is a climb.
Well, good luck with the training. I know that'll be a lot of work.
It already is. It
Yep.
already is.
Well, I think we hit a lot of really, really cool things here that I'm excited to share. Just want to give you the opportunity. Anything else that you want to share about mental health and entrepreneurship or just mental health in general?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, and I think we've definitely hit on it a couple of times, but the biggest thing is not to be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out. And there's so many people like me and like you who are mental health warriors. This is who we are, warriors. And there is help, and there's understanding, and there's compassion, and there is empathy out there
Hmm.
waiting for you with open arms.
Yeah.
Don't allow yourself to get into a dark space and unpack and camp out there.
Hmm.
It is totally normal and okay to get into dark spaces. But again, don't unpack there. Don't stay there. Reach
Yeah.
out, because there's so many people, again, that are just waiting for you with open arms,
Hmm.
um, to help.
Yeah. I think that's the big theme that I got out of this conversation too, is to share it, to share it and ask for help, because that's powerful by itself.
Courageous thing that somebody can do in my book.